Okay, let me
Mhm.
see. Live. Okay.
Should almost be.
Awesome. Awesome. Okay, we are live now.
Okay. We're live on there. I think live on. I just have to make sure we're live on
Okay,
our
gonna mute
other
myself
one.
on the live stream, but
Okay. I'm going to read off our disclaimer really quick here. So thank you everybody for joining Cancer Conversations and Choices tonight. We are going to have a fun discussion about diet and food and nutrition, so you're not going to want to miss out on this. My name is Marinette Smith. I'm a registered nurse and also a holistic cancer coach. And I'm just going to read off our disclaimer. This information that's shared in this podcast is for educational information purposes only. It's not intended for any medical advice and should not be used to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any medical condition. Always consult with a qualified healthcare provider before making any changes to your health, wellness, or treatment plan, and always consult with them. The views that are expressed by myself and the other hosts on this show do not reflect any views um, uh, regarding any specific medical advice. This is our opinions. This is information that we found, and we just want to share it with you guys. So, any choices that you decide to make from the information that you obtain from this podcast, you're taking full responsibility for. So, let's get started, Maya. Well, you introduce yourself.
yeah. Okay, I'm Maya Saman. We're missing Deborah today because she is on a flight apparently. It's another lady that usually we talk, three of us. We do discussions, but she might join later. Hopefully, if she lands on time. If not, then it's going to be me and Annette. So I'm Maya Saman. I am holistic cancer coach and functional nutrition and lifestyle practitioner. And I did hold a nursing degree, which I gave up. So what I do is I just focus on cancer coaching, and me, Annette, and Deb, all of us are cancer survivors. We went through cancer ourselves. So, what we're going to be discussing here today is diet related topics, and we would like to get your engagement in terms of asking questions in the chat or raising your hand to ask a question. And if there's anything not clear, we'll be happy to answer them to our best knowledge. Yeah.
So we're excited for you guys to join us. This has just been a topic that seems to be a lot that's out there. And
Yes.
as we've been both, like Maya was saying, we've gone through cancer. We can both attest to being overwhelmed by all the information that is out there and then trying to sort through it and making sure, am I following this correctly? Do I need to be doing this instead? What's going to be best for me? Oh, I heard this is amazing. So really just kind of diving into that information and making sure that we're sorting through it so that way you have a clearer direction on where you want to go with your choices.
Right. As we know nowadays on social media or anywhere you read, there's so many information, like it's basically bombarding social media, and people are so
Could you mute yourself?
So it's nothing to do
Thank
with.
you.
okay, yeah.
Okay.
So would you be able to mute people, Annette, if
Yep,
there
I can go
anything?
ahead and I
Okay,
can change that.
okay,
Yep.
yeah. So the reason we decided to do series of nutrition, diet related, and overall like whatever related to cancer, because there's a lot of information out there, and it's like social media has been bombarded basically with information. And when I get my clients, the very first thing that I could hear from them is like they're so confused, they don't know what to do and where to start. So, and we would like to talk on this, our podcast, about those stages, like how not to be lost and learn what exactly the diet is, what kind of approach people have to take when it comes to diet. Because people understanding diet is just a change of food, but there's so much in the diet. It's not just the food. It's like basically, you know, wide understanding the diet, because diet could come from breathing, nutrition could come from breathing, from grounding, from so many aspects of our lives, not just changing your food. Okay, so that's what we're going to be talking today. Any specific like topic, Annette, should I start with, or like you said, like you want to go with the questions?
Well, so one thing, I was actually listening to Dr. Thomas Seyfried, right? Is that how you say his name?
Seyfried,
Today.
yeah.
Seyfried, yes.
Yeah.
And he actually brought up a good question that I was actually wondering about, and I hear about this quite a bit in different cancer groups, and that is if like the ketogenic diet is actually a beneficial thing for patients to do. Is it effective? Is it not effective? Is ketosis kind of one of those hard things for cancer? If you're going through cancer, is that a difficult thing to obtain? What are the benefits really of it? Because we hear so much about the vegetables and juicing and like Gerson therapy kind of situations, but we don't hear so much about like ketogenic and more animal based. So I was going to hopefully see if you could shed some light about that, especially after listening to his discussion on that too.
Yeah. This is so interesting because on my Instagram, I got a message from someone asking me why people who are on vegetarian diet have been getting cancer. She said that she knows couple people who were just recently diagnosed with cancer being on vegetarian diet. That raises a lot of questions, like, what exactly diet and what exactly people should follow. Okay, so we're gonna look into the diet as a, biological process of our human body, right? We're gonna look into that, what exactly, Professor Thomas Seyfried does talk about ketogenic diet. The reason he talks about ketogenic diet is elimination, basically carbohydrate, because as far as we know, carbohydrates could create an environment for cancer to thrive. And that environment comes from switching the process from oxidative phosphorylation, making energy, or creating oxygen for the ATP production, for the energy production, right? So it switches its work basically into the studies, like Otto Warburg's study had shown, like when they added glucose to a healthy cell and a cancer cell, actually the healthy cells start producing more energy in terms of like oxygen, right? But cancer cells actually stop using oxygen as a source of their energy, so they kind of switch into the fermentation stage, which is
so instead of
lactic acid stage of like fermentation, and they can totally survive in anaerobic like environment. So which shows that for cancer to thrive, they don't need energy as like the healthy cells would need.
Exactly, because the energy changes. So like the energy of the cell
changes. Yes.
What the cell uses changes. So instead it's going to be using fermentation for that energy production instead of using oxygen like your healthy cell.
Right. That's exactly what it is. And for example, for the healthy cells to produce the ATP molecules, it requires only, one glucose molecule to produce 38 ATPs, 38 energy molecules. But for cancer, it requires 70 times more. So that means that the cancer cells do need glucose in a higher level to get the energy from to survive by 70%. So that should tell us a lot when we think about diet and what our diet should be coming from. And lowering your intake of carbohydrates in any form that has been showing, well, there's a lot out there, but it's beneficial. Yeah, the cancer is very tricky thing. Like it can, it would take his sources from anywhere, basically. It
Yeah.
would take it from the muscles, it would take it, the nutrients from every source of the body, it would
Mhm.
take it. But there's a lot when it comes to cancer, there's a lot in like, adipose tissues, the fat stores nutrients. And that fat comes in a couple of forms. As far as when I did my research, there's a brown fat and there's a white fat. Apparently brown fat stores more mitochondria, and
I
that
did not
is,
know that.
yes, brown fat stores more nutrients and mitochondria, and
Okay.
that comes into effect when when people would do fasting, for example. Brown fat is going to come into the picture of releasing, mitochondria and energy and giving body that energy. But white fat stores more toxins and byproducts.
Oh, okay.
It does store mitochondria, but more would store, it does have nutrients.
Mhm.
Therefore, like a lot of people, when they have a, liposuction section that around their tummy, when they have a tummy tag, they can go into direct like a fast like a nutritional deficiencies, because they
Yes.
take the fat out that stores the nutrients in the body. So, and it shows like those people do have nutrition deficiencies right after they have that procedure. So that tells us like, our fat tissues does store the nutrients.
Yes. Yes.
So it's very important to understand where the fat sources are coming from. When the fat sources are coming from keto, I mean from fat, is
Mhm.
different than the fat sources are coming from glucose, from carbohydrates are different.
Okay.
Because
Mhm.
of the process, the way the biological process of the body processing them both are different ways. Okay.
That makes so much sense though, because and I know that there's been a lot of discussion on, is cancer really, is it genetic? Is it mental? Is it epigenetics? Is it, um, you know, diet? But a lot of people are starting to focus on, studies too, where it's metabolic and mitochondria, I guess.
Mhm.
The
Yeah.
dysfunction between those two that's actually causing a lot of those issues. And it's
Yeah.
really like
Well,
you're explaining a lot of that in what you're
yeah.
saying.
Right. Actually, the Otto Warburg was first professor, I mean, scientist who stated that cancer is a metabolic disease,
Mhm.
and it's a mitochondrial dysfunction. It's basically mitochondria loses its function, and DNA of the mitochondria, not DNA of the cell, not nucleus
Uh,
DNA of the cell, but DNA of the mitochondria that affects in the changes and dysfunction of the mitochondrial dysfunction and the dysfunction of the cell.
mhm.
It's not that easy to change DNA or nucleus DNA, because
Yeah.
mitochondria basically would take a bullet on itself before the cell itself would take a bullet. This is how our biology basically protects our body.
Mhm.
It's the way naturally innate ability of our body, like it fights for us to stay alive and does everything to keep us healthy and alive. So mitochondria would lose, like, but when there's a mitochondrial damage, then the cell dies off. But then when the
Yes.
cell dies off and there's a cancer, there's a signaling goes to a brain
Mhm.
to produce like more cells, and then the stem cells. That's why we talk about stem cells of like the chemotherapy would destroy the cells, but would never destroy the stem cells of the cancer, and it continue producing cancer cells. You know, um,
And I think that that's a
so
really good, important basis to have when you're addressing cancer with nutrition, is understanding the whole biology and physiology, how it the pathophysiology, just how everything's working together, to really understand what your body is actually needing. And once we can understand that part, then it's just building from there. I know myself, and this was 10 years ago when I was going through cancer and cancer treatment, and I was going to nursing school at the same time. So I'm, adjusting all of these things, learning about it at the same time. But I saw the cancer from that perspective, like, okay, what's the biology of it? What's actually going on in my
mhm.
body? And then how can I support my body to be able to, you know, best be able to attack that or get rid of it. I didn't see it really as like a part of me. It was just something that my body just needed to adjust to and get rid of. But the way that you're explaining it really does make sense. And then how to use that nutrition to be able to help boost our bodies to be able to support ourselves and giving ourselves the best
Right.
chance. But and this I think is the other part that's kind of confusing for myself and some other people, and I've talked to you about this for myself even going through 10
Mhm.
years of survival. You're trying to just figure out what diet do I use? Do I use Mediterranean? Do I use keto? Do I use carnivore? Do I go through vegetarian and become vegan? Do I do Gerson therapy? And I've done quite a few of them. You can kind of tell differences in how you feel, but lately I've switched to some other things, and I've noticed that there's been even better benefit from that. And I think, like you were saying, just understanding our biology and how that affects everything that we're putting into our body and around our body. And we're also uniquely different, how to be able to approach cancer that way. So,
Right.
yeah.
Yeah. In the chat, Leonard, he put like down about a book, Jane McLennan book, which I'm very familiar with, like using ketogenic diet after 28 days, it would switch by using your body is going to use the fat and protein as a source of energy, as a source of fuel for cancer. Yes, the cancer could do that, but there's many other aspect comes into the picture. In that, as I said, like human biology is such a interesting mechanism to understand. Entire biology is it's such a um, it's such a complex, what exactly our diet should be. There's no randomized human studies on nutrition, on human nutrition, because it's unethical to take a human from a birth and just run a diet, throughout entire life and keep people a certain isolation to per se take two, and it has to be like two identical twins and keep like them in a different environment and say it after that, okay, we did human randomized studies and this is what we know that human needs this type of diet. Because the diet, basically the nutrition is all coming out of theories, opinions, and basically epidemiological surveys. There is no human randomized studies on nutrition. So the nutrition has to come based on your genetics, the areas you grew up, and your body is familiar, your genes are prone to. Humans are like, when we talk about plants, which I started at my journey when I was diagnosed with cancer, was like going raw, vegan diet, which I thought it was the best at the time because it was a Gerson therapy and I did like completely raw and stuff. I couldn't last more than 2 months because number one, I was constantly hungry. I had so low energy because I couldn't feel my body was what I needed with. At that time, I didn't know. This was a decade ago. At that time, I didn't know what am I missing. I thought I'm doing everything right based on the books that I was reading, Kelly Williams books, like Gerson therapy and other people. That I was like, okay, I'm doing everything right. But then I had no idea that what we're missing a lot of nutrients from in plants, we're missing them, and our body having a hard time isolating the nutrients from the plants because of the fiber itself, because of the cellulose, because our body does not make an enzyme to break down cellulose, and that cellulose actually takes the nutrients and take it out from your body, mixed with nutrients, so we're not getting needed nutrients. So this is, for me, learning that was kind of mind blowing, because the plants to me were like I was like I would say like a god, I would say. We have to consume plants, so 90% of my food was plant-based. After that I became vegetarian and getting low on energy, couldn't hold my muscles, my muscle mass, in terms of, I would like, my body became so, I would say, weak. It's so hard to say. Yeah, muscles. I started experiencing neurological symptoms, and then I started experiencing, sleepless nights and a lot of hormonal dysfunction because I completely cut myself out of, animal products, and I completely cut myself of a lot of fat. So, but then, but that opened another door for me because I start looking more deeper into that. What exactly my cancer was like hormonal driven cancer, for example, right? So I start, okay, how does our body makes hormone? Where the hormones are coming from? So I start going, I start deep diving in that process, like learning. Apparently, for our body to make hormones, your body needs saturated fat.
Yes.
And that
Yeah.
saturated fat has to have all nutrients in them, such as vitamin A, D, K, and E. Okay. So what are we getting that saturated fat from? You're not going to get it from anywhere but animal fat.
So
No
that would
plant
explain why you have like
contain.
the brain fog and like where you're just really kind of feel, because like I was only
Yes.
vegan for a very short period of time, and you just, I felt like I was just floating kind of in my body. Like I felt like my skin looked great. I did feel good and my labs were bursting. But
Mhm.
like one, I still had issues with my blood sugars. They would not come down.
Right.
And
Yeah.
I was still having major digestive issues, and I had colon cancer. So that's something that you
Right.
cannot like take lightly. So you have to really try to manage that and balance it out. And
Right.
yeah,
Yeah. That's another thing when you said about colon cancer. People with colon cancer having a hard time processing the fiber.
Yeah.
That is like from my practice, that's what I've been seeing. People who have colon cancer, when they consume fiber because a part of their colon either has been removed, and when doctors tells them to have a bowel movement, you have to, consume fiber. And I do see them having more problems unless they downsize the fiber intake, or in some cases we have to eliminate the fiber until their digestive repairs itself, and then we would add it on one by one, a fiber like the vegetables, to see which vegetables that fits well. So what I'm realizing, for example, and why am I talking about this stuff? It's just for people to be mindful. Just because someone is talking out there and telling you, oh, this is good for you, you gotta go and do that. Number one, you gotta find the source. Where is it coming from? Number two, you gotta do your research. Is that the real good thing for you? Because I've done it myself. I would just hear it. Just because it's coming from wellness, nutrition, or holistic sources, that doesn't mean they're legit. This is another thing that I do see in people, because, oh, there's the integrative doctor, we're talking about that, but find the resource, where is it coming from? So I just past 10 years, I've been through the stages myself, and I did feel that, and working with my clients, I see the pattern, like repeated pattern, in them, what they are missing. So what Leonard is talking about, ketogenic diet and body using fat and protein as a source of making glucose. Yes, I do see that, and I know that, and body will do that. Body will use that, and it's not going to become, sustainable at some point unless you understand what your body needs, at what level you are. Saying per se like ketogenic diet is not going to work and it's not sustainable, we cannot say that. The reason for it, even those studies that have done on mice, number one, it was done on mice, not on humans, and were different. Number two, when those studies have been done, they never took environmental. There's so many different aspects could evolve around it that the scientists don't put that in the picture. They're like, for me, for example, to learn the level of protein I have to consume and level of fat I have to consume, it should come based on your physical activities, based on your body. Everyone is very by individual. You cannot just like go per se when they talk about you need 6 grams of fat or 6 grams of protein per day for your body. That is such a big lie. you have to build it. It took me 5-6 months to build mine, for example, to get to that level that when I wake up in the morning, I don't see that spike in glucose. I see that glucose is down because it didn't matter. Like I don't consume carbohydrates, right? All I consume, I'm on a strict ketogenic diet, but when I wake up in the morning, I would still wake up with high glucose levels. So you have to learn where your body at to be able to keep your body at that level of fiber, not fiber, I mean like protein and fat consumption. But your body need that protein, number one, to hold on to muscle mass, especially very important when people go through chemotherapy. Losing muscle mass is so easy when people go through chemotherapy. Number two, to help your body make energy by using fat instead of using carbohydrates.
Okay.
Right. And number three, your body still will make carbohydrates at the percentage your body needs, at the percentage of muscles or the brain. But the muscles again comes from the picture. If you're exercising, if you're not exercising, what activity you do, what you're surrounded with, what your epigenetics are, you have to know basically everything. You
Really
cannot
paying
just do
attention to yourself.
exactly. This is what I do with my client. I build it with them that level where they have to be at. By saying like ketogenic or even carnivore diet is not sustainable. I would ask those people, show me the proof. Show me the legit science, show me the proof, then I would trust. Because I personally could not find any studies or any research that would state that. So if you have those, show it to me. But what I see, what our body needs is all form of nutrients that comes from animal protein. By saying that animal protein is bad for cancer, I need to see the study personally. Because I do see it, I did see it on my personal experience. I've seen it on my families. I've seen it from my clients. Unless we added a certain amount of protein to keep the body nutritionally functioning, but at the same time not spiking glutamine levels that also could fit cancer.
Oh, true. Very good point. I'm glad you
Right?
mentioned that part of it. Yes,
Because
that is
people
such a big
say,
part of
yeah,
it.
people say glutamine could fit cancer, and Professor Thomas Seyfried talks about it a lot.
Mhm.
So bringing your body to that level of the protein intake and fat intake that is not going to do that, but at the same time would give you that nutrition level that your body needs to function on a daily basis. And that comes with your exercise levels, that comes with fasting, that comes with intermittent fasting. There's so many things that people have to be like mindful about before they talk about, what exactly the diet is a perfect diet for humans,
Yes.
because we don't know that.
Well, and we talked about this personally ourselves and amongst other groups. It's
Right.
like we look
Right.
to our ancestors, we look to see what, had they've been doing for hundreds of years. I was actually looking at a study too that there's even like recent tribes that don't have contact with really the outside world, and there's like really not cancer existent, and they eat as ancestrally, I guess, probably as you would.
Right.
But the other part that I wonder about that too is oh geez, I just lost my train of thought. But a lot of it was along the lines of the ancestry, and then the gene mutations. There's all of that to add into it, but it just making sure that we have enough nutrients within us. I mean, you got to think about it. When you're going through cancer, you don't feel like eating. Food doesn't taste good. Trying to make it palatable as much as possible. I actually did a lot of conventional stuff with holistic treatment myself, but I've really been eating animal proteins, and I've had fats and I did keto, and like I was saying before, and I've been cancer free for 10 years. And I get
Right.
colonoscopies very frequently. And so if I notice that I'm going a certain way, which usually includes more carbohydrates, more
Right.
actual fiber issues, I will have like a growth like polyps. But if you go the opposite direction, then it really is very individualized.
Mhm.
But the
Yeah.
other thing I was going to ask you about that, I really wish I could remember. I'm sorry. I had a good question for you and it just escaped my mind.
Well,
But anyways,
yeah, Harmon has a
oh,
hand
your
raised.
hand's up. Okay.
Maybe we can like yeah, hands up. Yeah, let's see until you remember your question. Yeah.
Oh, I have it written
Well,
down
let's
too.
see.
I'll read through my
Okay.
notes.
Hi,
Yeah.
everybody. Just a
Hi.
couple. Can you hear me okay with this microphone?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
The whole conversation is fascinating, and it reminds me of Dr. Nasha Winter's test, assess, address.
Right.
We can talk theoretically about anything, but until we get the measurements back, we see how that person is actually, showing up in the results, test results, and then respond accordingly. It also reminds me
Right.
of a book. I can't remember the name of it, where, and I think Nasha agrees with it, is this idea of metabolic flexibility being
Right.
very important. And I think if it's I'm going to get your name wrong.
Marinette, it's okay.
Okay, Marinette.
Yeah.
I want to, of course, I want to call you Marionette, and that's ridiculous.
It's okay. I've gotten that most of my life, and I
I
still
know,
would probably answer to
I
it.
know. Let's go after your parents as soon as we can, please. Um,
Yeah.
but no, but seriously, because with all the research I've done, a lot of things pop into my mind, and I just want to say during that last 10 minutes, metabolic flexibility answers that one burning question, which is, how long should I stick on keto, and what are the consequences, and should I shift, and what are the big, and there is no real answer. Maya, through her own intense investigations, does know the answer for herself personally, and that's rare. I think that's rare, and that's good. But for people who are more just question mark, question mark, question mark, question mark, the answer is there is no one answer. But
There's none.
I have a hard time finding Dr. Nasha Winters. In other words, her approach is prove it. Like you were saying, Maya, prove it to me, show it to me. She is
Exactly.
saying, make your changes, do your testing, see your results, assess, address, and then make changes as needed. And I have to be honest with you, I'm biased. I'm a big fan of hers. I'm just a big fan of hers. So I had to throw it
Yeah.
out there. So
Yeah.
that's what
No.
I wanted to interject. Thank you for the opportunity there.
Oh, you're very welcome. That's exactly what I'm talking about. And that's what I want to bring the point is there's no such a diet that could fit everyone. I mean, there is to my belief, but I don't want to throw out there like, but again, everyone is so different by individually. Number one, our genetics are so different. I came from other part of the world. And for example, the breast cancer I had, that was estrogen progesterone positive breast cancer, would not be driven, or root cause of it would not be the same as someone else's who were born here, because our genetic predispositions are so different, and being exposed to environmentally to toxins and many other things. Like we have to put on the scale everything to be able to see what our body is exactly needing it. We might have some gene mutations here and there, but that doesn't mean you cannot reverse them, you cannot repair them. And science has been showing you can manipulate your genes. So that's another thing. Like let's talk about glutathione, for example. A lot of people thinking, okay, glutathione, I need to take glutathione, and it's good for cancer, it's a main antioxidant. But people, when we talk about diet, you have to understand that how do you activate glutathione in your body? Grounding would activate your glutathione more than supplementing with a glutathione. So this is a diet that we would like to talk about. Like it's not only food, it's everything that you have to pay attention. And I've learned that grounding activates the glutathione production in your body. There is also, of course, the precursors for glutathione, the amino acid that actually comes from animal sources than the plant sources. You actually cannot have a plant source and activate the glutathione production in your body. But animal sources you do have, because the precursors, it's coming like the selenium, the cysteine, glutamine, and glycine. Those are like mainly comes from animal proteins, more bioavailable form for our body, it's easier to digest and break it down and easier to convert. But there's other things. So like waking up in the morning, sunrise, activates so many functions of our body, activates like vitamin D, synthesis in our body. That is a nutrition, that is a digestive, that is a food to your body. And we don't take that. We rather take the supplements of vitamin D instead of stepping out in the sun. Actually, when you step out in the sun, you get better version of vitamin D. I actually have a client that I was talking today. She has a very high level of vitamin D in her body. Why? She's taking a high level of vitamin D and it's high in her system. She had a blood test done. So my understanding is because she has a lack of being exposed to the sunlight and her body being low on saturated fat, the vitamin D she's taking is not utilizing in her body. That's my understanding. Okay. And and I told her, like, expose yourself to sunlight. It doesn't mean you have to take a high level of vitamin D. You gotta expose yourself to sunlight. You gotta spend time. You gotta expose your skin. You gotta take a proper dose of vitamin, the saturated fat. Your body needs that saturated fat. You don't wear like dark glasses outside in the sun because they prevent your body utilizing vitamin D. So the diet is not about just changing, eating a grass or food or apple or meat. The diet, it comes from so many different sources that we have to learn about that. And we have to know many things like, blue light, the screen of the blue light screen sitting in front of the computer, the retina of your eyes send the synthesis to your brain and it depletes your body in the melatonin production. And then people go and take melatonin supplements.
I think it just really
so blocking that, yes,
brings up a very good point of like the sun has so many other actions that initiate and instigate your in your body to be able to help manage your bodily functions. I mean, it's just like one of those things, like we really should not be supplementing. I mean, even like red light therapy, saunas, all that is in direction because we are not getting into the sun. We're not spending time in the sun. And even if it's cloudy outside, that would even be more beneficial than even taking the supplements themselves. Like you just brought up a really good point. I'm glad you actually talked about the glutamine because that's what I was actually going to ask you about was the glutamine, because it's the glucose and the glutamine that you have to really be worried about, right? With cancer cells?
Because the glutamine is another thing that ferments in your body. And the glucose ferments and glutamine is another thing that ferments and basically causes that lactic acid environment for cancer cells to be in based on the last publication of Professor Thomas Seyfried and his team's work. But the glutamine is such an important amino acid. Our body cannot just survive without it. We need it. We're going to die without glutamine. It plays a function. It's in so many synthesis, enzymatic functions of our body. It's like, but the question is, how can you lower that glutamine? You have to have it. And then when people talk about like cutting last time I think Mark on our call, he stated like methionine, also another source for cancer. Yes, I do believe that the cancer has many sources that gets its nutrients, everything. Excuse me, cancer cell would use all the nutrients, whether it's glutamine or glucose or whatever. It would use all form of fats and everything. Cancer knows its way out. The problem is our body accepted the cancer. It's not normal cell function. So Debbie's here. I'm glad. Yeah. So hi, Debbie. Yeah. So hi. So the thing is, like, how can you get the source of nutrients, but at the same time keep that glutamine levels at the bay so it won't feed the cancer? And the people have no idea that chemotherapy and radiation byproducts are also fermented glutamine. And that's another thing why people after radiotherapy might get like glutamine, fermented glutamine spike. So the best way, of course, it's hard to get the drug. The Professor Sifrit talks about lowering the glutamine, but best way is exercising. That has been proven itself in so many ways. The best ways is exposing your body into contrast, temperatures, cold and hot. And the best way of course, I know green tea extract, ECGC, lowers the glutamine, So you have to do your research to understand that. Okay, just because we're talking about methionine or glutamine, yeah, Mark mentioned that methionine is like in meat is highest, yes. But in what amount, And from my perspective, for example, when I was on a raw vegan diet, I had to eat so much vegetables to fill myself in because I was depleting my body in a lot of protein. And I had to eat so much vegetables. So I would go to that level. It would at least make me full. But my blood sugar would spike to the roof. That's another thing. So when we consume such a high level of vegetables, aren't we increasing methionine levels in there? Or aren't we increasing the glutamine levels in there by consuming a large amount in opposed to having like 4 to 6 ounces of eating animal protein, where you can get like all form of amino acids. So we gotta ask so many questions when it comes to our diet. What exactly need B complex? We cannot get B complex from any plants unless you consume red meat. And it's most bioavailable form. Or you have to substitute with synthetics. So you got to choose which one works for you.
Which if you have an MTHFR gene mutation, that's it's supplementation is probably not your best direction to go. It's actually getting it from the source, the natural source, so your body can break it down. Correct?
Right.
To be able to, okay.
Yeah, for people who have MTHFR gene mutation, Mark mentioned that it's good to keep it at bay, keep it mutated.
Mm-hmm.
But then, okay, MTHFR gene mutation, that means your body cannot process the folate, cannot synthesize folate. So that means that, okay, I would keep cancer at bay by not activating my, the folate, pathway. But that's going to affect down the road my heart muscles, my brain, my other things. So is it the good thing for me to keep it at bay? That's a question I want to ask Mark when he talked about it, because folate deficiency could link to so many different other problems.
So many other issues.
So the question is, what am I saving myself from?
Mm-hmm. That is such an excellent question. You really should be asking yourself that.
Yeah. So there's a lot of that's why the research, you just have to do your own research and see where you're coming from. If you're on a diet, let's say for 3 months and you're not seeing the success with it, or for 6 months and you're not seeing the level, and the level I'm talking about, you have tons of energy when you wake up in the morning, you don't have a brain fog, you don't have body aches or muscle aches, you don't have a headache, you're sleeping through the night, you're just living your life like the way you should live, then you're on the right path. But if you're having a problem, then you have to ask the question, okay, what isn't there that is not working out for you? When you have a body aches, or you have an inflammation, or you have a headache, or whatever is it in there, you have to ask yourself a question, okay, where is it coming from? What is there I'm not doing right? What should I pay attention to?
Yeah.
Okay. So
becoming very self-aware is probably your biggest asset that you can do, and knowing how your body is functioning, and then being able to take the measures to be able to help adjust that is probably key.
I would say that the God or creator provided us with everything what we need to have to function in this lifetime, in terms of nutrients and exposure to the sun. Sun has its own purpose. Even if it's cloudy day, you can expose yourself to those infrared lights. They're still there. They're out there still. You can expose yourself to those red lights, because we created artificial red lights and completely forgotten about the red light that we get from sun. We rather pay money instead of going and getting them naturally in the frequencies or in the strengths that meant to be for us, our biology meant to have. and that's exactly what I'm talking about. Like we created everything synthetically and exposing ourselves to synthetic options instead of using that for free that comes from nature.
Yep.
Yep. So that's like, and then when we talk about fruits and vegetables, which my biggest question right now, many of those fruits and vegetables, they've been hybridized, they've been cultivated, they've been GMO'd, even organic ones. So when we consuming them, are we getting what they meant to have in the first place for us? And then nowadays they've been sprayed, whether they're organic or non-organic, are we getting, and they've been growing on the soil that has been sprayed and depleted and been worked so many times. So are we getting the same, even by looking at the size of the strawberry, you could say it's like it probably has 6 little strawberry, if it's not more, the ones that used to be before. So my question is the question I'm asking myself, that am I getting what I need to get from these fruits and vegetables, or they're different now? They're different from 50 years what they were before. So am I getting everything what I need to get? That's my biggest question. And that is like kind of stopping me to look more, especially when they've been sprayed, even organic ones. And unfortunately, we live in a society where there's a lot of lies, and the science based on Food and Drug Administrations, like input, than a real human studies, So and that's why we have to question everything what we put our hands on.
Exactly. And you need to have a really like a guide to be able to like go off of. And I think that's really, I'm glad that we're having this conversation, because like we were talking before we even started, really just how there's just so much information on how to sort through it, like what is best, and hopefully like people asking themselves those same questions, like what's best for me, how is this working for me, how am I feeling about this, is this really helping me and making a difference? But I do have a question for you about something. Excuse me. Do you have much information on algae? Like what's your perspective on algae?
On algae? I know best DHA and EPA we can get from a source itself, which is the fish in the ocean, because for the fish for their body to make DHA or the omegas, fatty acids, they have to consume certain algae, and the way their body processes that makes DHA, EPA, and then when we consume it, we absorb it better, and it's best bioavailable. When we get the DHA and EPA from plants, we're having a little hard time processing that. So biologically, so they come in the form of I believe so, alpha. If I'm not mistaken, they come like as in the form of alpha instead of beta. So alpha is like when your body takes it, let's say like carrot, you eat carrot, which is like contains like I forgot the word.
The beta carotene?
Beta carotene, yes, thank you. So it contains beta carotene, which our body takes it and converts it into the, vitamin A. So, or converts it into the other form. So, but you can directly get vitamin A from a real source, which is like, fish oil or butter, so it's more bioavailable. Your body is not creating, your liver should not create enzyme to take that beta carotene and convert it into something else. So that's the energy your body spending, coming up with a formula that has to create an enzyme to be able to convert beta carotene into vitamin A. Yes. So when you can take a fat and consume direct vitamin A, that is more bioavailable to your body. Same thing as algae. So when you use algae, when you use EPA DHA in a capsule form from algae, yes, your body would use it, but it's you're gonna probably get about 40% of that, instead of 100% by consuming, like by eating like wild fish, for example, once or twice a week. So that's what exactly the diet, like you have to know like where your diet is coming from and what exactly your body, how is the biological process of your body, right?
So
What does
can
it do?
can you touch
Yeah.
on enzymes then? Because that's actually where I was leading to with the algae. So can you touch on that and how that actually affects us if we're like enzyme deficient, or like you were saying, if your body has to create something to be able to turn something else into something that's more bioavailable? Can you shed some light on that for us?
Well, our body makes enzymes based on what we eat. The liver would make it. Let's say liver would make enzymes based on what we eat and what the source is available in the body. So it would create everything. Like let's say if we took, people talk about flaxseed and they're saying like a flaxseed is high in omega fatty acids, which it is, but it's alpha fatty acid. It's not beta. So our body does better very well with beta form, not alpha form, because that alpha form level would make an enzyme to convert it into the beta and extract it what it needs. But the extraction is going to be at the level of 40%, probably 20 to 40%. So you're not getting a full, let's say, omega fatty acids from that. You're getting just partially. And that's why a lot of people are, they're depleted in nutrients. They do talk about, I don't know, Deb, where I know you're driving. I don't know if you want to add anything to that or not. Deb is the third person when we have our roundtable discussion, or if you want to wait. So the source, but if you eat a piece of butter, you're going to get everything from it. You're going to get butyrate from it, butyric acid, that's beneficial for your gut health, that your microbiome loves butyrate environment. It thrives in butyrate environment. When we talk about digestive health, you need that butyrate. And the best source of butyrate comes from butter, directly, instead of going through fermentation process of the fiber. Your body spend more energy and create more different, and it goes through stage of like creating like aldehyde, alcohol throughout the fermentation process. When it goes through fermentation process, that when we eat fiber, the body has to go through that process and it would create alcohol, the fermentation alcohol, aldehyde, and then, lactic acid and everything to be able on the end to give you that little level of butyric acid. It's a lot of work. But when you go, yeah, but when you eat butter, your body would just go through the beta oxidation and give you that butyrate. Very simple, very easy, So,
And you want to eat like a grass-fed, grass-finished kind of butter, correct? Like that's going to be the better way to go?
Preferably, yes. And people should not be afraid of eating animal fat and animal product throughout the cancer, because there's actually no science, no research, no study had been showing that they do cause cancer. If you take a steak or meat and you do a research and you learn what is a compound of the steak, it's basically muscles, it's 60% water, protein, fat, and minerals. So what exactly in those four could harm the body? None, unless you cook your meat in the state of like when it gets black or, but if you cook your vegetables, burn them, they also could cause the same thing. So yes, does really meat cause cancer? There's no actually legit studies out there. I've done my homework. That's what I'm talking about.
Because there's chemical changes.
Yeah, before I start eating animal product, I have done tons of homework. Months of homework.
How many months, Maya? It was a long time.
About 7 months or 8 months of doing and looking for a research, and I couldn't find any. So if any of you can find anything, I'll gladly read about those researches. But I personally could not find anything like that. So what I just see from my personal experience, number one, the keto form of diet, low carbohydrate diet, or no carbohydrate. In my case, no carbohydrate diet. Why? Because I'm diabetic. And I know how blood glucose levels affect cancer. So for me, the best way for my body to not give carbohydrates, and I could not do that being on plant-based diet. I couldn't. So I tried. I was a juice queen. I have tried for 7 years. It's not just a month or 2 months. I've tried for 7 years, but I couldn't. But past couple of years being on what I am on right now, I keep my glucose levels at the lowest as I can. That's number one. I understand like a Jane McLennan's book, but that's worked for her. That doesn't mean it would work for everyone. That's number one. People can take her information and work with it based on their condition. It doesn't mean it's going to work for everyone. So, and I've seen Jane McLennan actually in the at the conference. So
I guess the other thing we did forget to talk about was the whole oxalate issue, because there's that whole situation with eating that many vegetables and if your body can actually process it, and that
right. Yes, that's another thing. In my case, for example, if your microbiome does not have a bacteria that breaks down those oxalate that present in the plants, your body is going to hit at some point, it's going to increase the inflammation in the joints, kidney stones, gallbladder stones, there's so many the side effects from oxalates, which I tend to get myself into, and I couldn't understand where the problem is coming, because I was like, I thought that I'm such a great diet that everyone talks about, 90% of plants, tons of juicing. I'm talking about 5-6 cups of juicing a day, all green, no sweets, could not bring the blood sugar down. And oxalate were overloaded with oxalate. When I stopped consuming plants and went on ketogenic, I had a oxalate dumping. It would come from my gums and it would come from my eyes. It was such an interesting process, for people to learn. And I learned about oxalate based on the book of Sally Norton that called Toxic Superfood. It's a great book to read for people to understand. That the plant do contain compounds that are not, that doesn't fit our body, and it prevents nutrients absorptions. So, and I do see that on people who come 100% vegetarians. Number one, they come with higher glucose levels, and number two, they come to me because they're depleted in nutrients. So we have to question everything. Where is the plant-based came from? Okay, what is the science behind it? Why everyone is pushing fiber? Is there science behind the fiber? Like, I couldn't find any studies on those things. Legit studies I could not find. And every study you find, you have to scroll down and see who is funding those studies. Are they epidemiological surveys? Are they opinion? Are they theories? When I learned about meat being carcinogenic, but not carcinogenic, it basically came from WHO.
Really?
Basically, they just made that statement, meat is carcinogenic, out of nowhere.
That's so in your research, like,
right.
And you are
and
an
it
excellent
just
researcher.
picked up. Yeah, and it just picked up and it just went around speaking and when people talk about red meat, especially when it comes to cancer, immediately they go like, oh, it's rottens in your stomach. It become acidic and it causes problems. But where's the studies? I want to see them.
Yeah. I can actually recall that, even because I was diagnosed with, with colon cancer. I can actually recall that being in the material. I actually don't know that any studies were actually related to it. And now that I think about it, I don't know that I've actually read any.
There's none
related to that.
Yeah, there's none. It's the same, and there's none studies on cholesterol like causing heart conditions, heart diseases. There's none. It doesn't exist. So if someone can find them, I'll be happy to look at them. I actually find different studies how beneficial the red meat is from 1920s of what was this? There were a couple of researchers they had done. They were on the carnivore diet, a meat-based diet for a year, and they were in the university every single day being monitored by the group of doctors. I forgot Waldemar Swanson, I believe so, his last name, if I'm not mistaken. That's the only study I found. And they did not find anything but improvement in the health and improvement in all the blood work. Nothing else was found in that study.
That is
So
very
if,
interesting.
yeah, that's the only thing I found, 1920s, but it wasn't like a randomized study or anything, but it was just the experimental.
26 toward Belmont.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's the only thing I found when it comes to animals, animal products. But if as I said, if anyone can find anything, you can just send it my way. I'll be happy to read it. So Deb, did you want to add anything?
Yeah, I did. I apologize. I just had the visor fall on me. I
That's
did
okay.
want to, and I apologize for being late, but we landed late. Everything you said was spot on. And the only thing I would wanted to add was really my experience, and that was the same as you for the most part. I was juicing, I was eating raw vegetables, I was cooking my vegetables, and I ended up with kidney stones. And I'd never had kidney stones before in my life. And so I had a run of kidney stone action there for a while, about 6-7 years ago, and then started changing my diet. I thought, well, it can't be, I started changing my diet. And now, now that I have gone complete carnivore, I don't have those issues. I haven't had any of those issues. I feel better. So it does make a big difference. But again, just like you said too, not everybody is the same. So definitely do your research and find out what works for you. I know a lot of times too, then after a while, I like a really nice salad and I like that for a couple of days, but then I have to go back. I have to go back to the carnivore because that just really makes the best difference for me. So,
Right.
yeah.
I know we're on the top of the hour, but I want to add one thing, like the supplementation has to come from your real food. Like your nutrients has to come from real food, not supplementing with synthetic stuff, right?
Right.
Because because we don't know what those sources are coming from. I just learned that, let's say, there's certain, for example, certain protein, like certain amino acids are made out of human hair in the supplements. They use human hair as a source of protein to make certain proteins for people to consume. I'm like, okay, this is like, for me, it's big no. So it's just like, yeah, where is it coming from? I'm like, what are we exactly consuming here? Supplement. Why are we consuming so many supplements when we have to get this from food source?
Exactly.
That should be our food, right? That has to be our nutrients.
Exactly.
So, and that's what, like, I just blindly listening and going and taking like supplements, just learn where they're coming from, learn what you're putting in your body, and see how you're feeling, because your body constantly talking to you. It gives you sign, it gives you signals, it gives you everything. Just listen to that, right?
It does. Absolutely, it does. The best way, if you can do it naturally, if you can go to, we see more farmers markets popping up. We see a lot more people attending the whole grocers, natural foods, and that type of thing, which is fantastic. And that's really kind of what you want. A lot of people are starting to grow their own. And so that can be a whole other topic, but a lot of people too, it's expensive, right? So how do we do that? And that might be another topic for another time, is how do we do that? How can we do that to be affordable? There are ways to do that. And that could be simply planning ahead, really planning ahead, freezing and thawing, and then doing those types of things as far as meal preparation. And that can go a long ways as well in doing that. So I just wanted to throw that in there.
Right. We're going to do a series of these talks on, especially on nutrition, because it's been such a big, like a challenge for a lot of people. So we decided just to continue and break it down, maybe down the road and see, what if any of you out there are interested on any particular topic and would like to learn something more about something, we're gonna do our homework and we're gonna bring it to the table and discuss it together. And if you have any questions that you would like us to address, also please, you can contact us through social media and everything. So because we were talking here, a lot of things that we went through ourselves, and we learned our steps, like being where we're at today and being cancer free. For me, it's a decade now, 10 years, and I went through cancer twice. So it's a decade now, and for Deb it's also been a couple of years now, and Annette 10 years, more than 10 years, Annette. Yeah.
10 years,
So
yeah.
right. So we've been through cancer, we've been through challenges, and we kind of built our way where we're at today by doing our homework. So, and that's all we would like to talk about. So if you have any questions, please,
Yeah, definitely let us know. That was such a wonderful discussion. That was awesome, ladies. We're so glad that we got to have you
And
join us,
gentle-
Deb, at the end.
yes, and gentlemen too. We
Yeah,
have a-
yes, and gentlemen. Sorry, yes.
Gentlemen.
I do see
you,
Leonard's
everyone.
picture, and I do
Thank
see
you.
Moon. Yes, yes. You're welcome.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And thank you
It's
for
nice to be
joining us
back.
this week. Yes.
Yeah.
So we'll be back
Yeah.
in what's this week?
2 weeks from now.
So the first, I believe it's the 1st
Oh
of July.
yes, it will
we
be.
were
It'll be
back.
July 1st. Mhm.
July 1st, the same time, we're gonna be back with our live show. Okay.
Yes.
All right.
Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us today.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. You can catch the recordings actually later on
Mhm.
on the YouTube channel and the platform. Okay.
Yes.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you, Leonard. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
I'm gonna end this and then I'll send a new one. Okay.